Question number 1.
Minister.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer questions 1, 6 and 19 together. Israel must immediately allow rapid and unhindered aid into Gaza. The Foreign Secretary raised the humanitarian situation with Israeli Foreign Minister Saar on Sunday. We've recently announced £4 million of further UK humanitarian support for Gazans, and we will continue to urge Israel to lift restrictions on humanitarian aid to allow the UN and other aid organisations to operate safely and independently.
Thank you, Minister. This morning I heard from my medical colleague, Dr. Rebecca Inglis, of healthcare workers watch that a GP in Gaza was killed by Israeli soldiers, shot in the head, Mr. Speaker. He is just one of 1,200 healthcare workers who have been murdered by Israeli forces. Countless others have been unlawfully detained and tortured. Israel is deliberately destroying the Palestinian healthcare system. Will the Minister please raise this with his Israeli counterpart?
Minister.
I can confirm to my honourable friend that I have raised these issues with my Israeli counterpart. It is appalling that hundreds of healthcare workers have reportedly been killed since the start of the conflict. We continue to urge the Israeli authorities to ensure that incidents are investigated transparently and that those responsible are held to account and lessons learned. Healthcare workers, premises and facilities must be protected, allowing medical staff to do their work.
First.
More than 450 Palestinians have been killed in recent weeks when Israeli forces opened fire on those attempting to collect aid from GHF. The people of Gaza not only face daily risks from bombs and bullets, but the ever-present danger of man-made drought and famine. Will the government commit to using all resources at its disposal, including further sanctions and arms embargo, to ensure that aid is delivered to Gaza under the auspices of the UN and other suitably qualified bodies?
Minister.
The killing of civilians at aid distribution centres in Gaza is horrifying. Israel must fulfil its obligations under international law to ensure unhindered humanitarian assistance. I won't speculate about future sanctions or arms embargoes, but we do continue to engage with our partners and will not hesitate to further action if the government of Israel does not change course.
Mr. Speaker, Musa Abu Darabi is just one of hundreds of Palestinians who have been killed trying to access food from the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation in recent weeks. 15 international human rights organisations have now warned that the GHF may face legal consequences for aiding and abetting or otherwise being complicit in crimes under international law, including war crimes, crimes against humanity or genocide. Will the Minister join me in condemning the murder of desperate and starving people, and what assessment does he make of the GHF's legality?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, no one should risk death or injury to feed their family. And as I said in this House on the 4th of June, Israel's aid delivery measures are inhumane. We will not support any mechanism that endangers civilians. And we've continuously called on Israel, including most recently on Sunday, to immediately allow the UN and aid partners to safely deliver all types of aid at scale.
Desmond Swain.
On 3 occasions, the Minister, in answering this question, has said Israel must. What will he do if Israel doesn't?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as the honourable gentleman knows, this government has taken a series of actions in response to developments in Gaza. We will continue to take such actions until the situation changes.
Alexis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What is the government's assessment of how effectively medical aid can be delivered to those in need in Gaza, including the remaining Israeli hostages?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, aid can be delivered effectively into Gaza. There is an established mechanism through the United Nations and its partners. We want to see those mechanisms in place, but the honourable gentleman raises the vital question of ensuring that the hostages themselves get sufficient access to food. Both my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, and I have heard directly from Eli Sharabi, a released hostage, who talks about the deprivation of food from hostages by Hamas. That must stop, and they must immediately release all hostages.
We're a Hobhouse.
Mr. Speaker, my Bath constituents have watched in horror as Israeli forces have reportedly killed over 400 Palestinians and injured thousands more in aid distribution centres in Gaza. Over the weekend, dozens more Palestinians were killed while trying to access humanitarian aid. Why is the government still permitting the transfer of F-35 components to Israel through the international pool, knowing these aircraft may be used in operation causing mass civilian casualties?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've set out the reasons why the government has had to make special measures in order to ensure that the F-35 programme continued to operate, including our continued role in the global supply, the global spares pool, which is in the United States. But I agree with the sentiments of the Honourable Lady's constituent. Clearly, the deaths around aid distribution centres are horrifying, and there needs to be a full investigation, action taken. But vitally, aid must get into Gaza at the scale required from enough distribution centres in order to try and avoid the horrifying scenes that so many have seen.
Chair of the Select Committee, Emily Thornbury.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We must not forget Gaza, despite the fact that the eyes of the world are now turned to the Iran-Israel war. It's very important that we continue to remember the suffering of the Gazans and we continue to move on it. As a witness to my committee said, there is lethal chaos in Gaza, a witness from MSF. But there is one read across, I think, from the Iran-Israel war, which I think we should learn from, which is the clear closeness between Israel and America and the fact that America can influence Israel. Yes. In our conversations with the Americans, can I ask the Minister to ensure that we continue to say to the Americans not to give up on Gaza and to use their influence to ensure that the Israelis do the right thing? There must be peace and the hostages must come home.
Yeah. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government will not give up on Gaza. I can confirm that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, has raised Gaza in his engagements with the US. I have not forgotten about Gaza and was speaking to Palestinian counterparts just last night. The situation in Gaza will remain a top priority for this government.
Mr. Speaker, Israel dealing with Hamas and Hezbollah is to be welcomed. But what is not to be welcomed is the continuing blockage of medical and humanitarian aid into Gaza. Whilst we continue to talk, children continue to die. And I hope that the Foreign Secretary will make it very, very clear that the continuation of children dying every single day is unacceptable, that he will stand up to the White House and the State Department and the Pentagon. He will stand up to the Knesset and to the current Israeli government of Netanyahu. The current deaths are just going on and on and on. How many more children need to die before something changes?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said, the Foreign Secretary has raised these issues both with his American counterparts and indeed his Israeli counterparts, and I have done the same. We remain steely focused on the situation in Gaza, including the tragic scenes about the deprivation of aid and the impact that is having on civilians right across the Strip, including children. We are trying to take every measure we can to try and reduce that suffering, including aid in where it can be brought in, aid into the region where that is the most appropriate way to reach the medically vulnerable, and in a few small cases ensuring that Gazan children can access medical assistance here.
Shall the Secretary of State David Patel.
Yeah. Mr. Speaker, the humanitarian situation in Gaza simply cannot continue, and we've spent a lot of time in this House discussing the extent of the humanitarian situation and the fact that food and essential supplies are not getting into support innocent victims. Can I specifically ask the Minister, what discussions has he put to Israel and what proposals has he put for the opening of specific crossing points for aid delivery into Gaza? And can he give his assessment as to why he thinks the Israeli government may not be listening to this country and our government on this particular issue?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the disagreement between the Israeli government is not simply with the British government. It was with a wide range of their partners. As I know, the Right Honourable Lady is aware, we signed a statement with 26 partners about the humanitarian situation. We did a leaders-level statement with France and Canada. There is a wide disagreement with the approach that the Israeli government are taking in relation to aid distribution. The Foreign Secretary discussed these matters, including entry points, with the Foreign Minister of Israel just over the weekend. We would like to see the Israeli government shift position. It is clear, for the reasons that the Right Honourable Lady says, that that shift must come urgently.
Callum Miller, Liberal Democrats spokesperson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Thursday, I received a message from Mohammed, an NHS doctor with family in Gaza. He wrote, "My 16-year-old nephew was missing for 5 days after heading out to retrieve humanitarian aid at a location announced by Israeli forces. We found him dead yesterday, his body mutilated, eaten by stray dogs. He died alone. No one could reach him or others like him in time. He was only a boy who desperately wanted to get food for his starving family." On the 10th of June, the Minister sanctioned 2 ministers who advocated for the blockade of Gaza, noting that this will not remove Hamas nor ensure the hostages are released. But nothing has changed. So what further steps is the government taking today to signal to the government of Israel that the UK will not stand idly by while children in Gaza are starved, denied medicine or killed as they seek food for their families?
The Honourable Gentleman shares with the House a heartbreaking story, and I know it is one of thousands of lives lost in Gaza. The situation is intolerable, and we will continue to take further action. As I said, the Foreign Secretary raised this issue with the Foreign Minister on Sunday. Clearly, there have been significant developments in the Middle East since the 10th of June. This is now the time for Israel to implement a ceasefire, allow aid in, Hamas to release hostages, and for us to try and draw a line over the horrifying suffering of Mohammed and many others like him.
Edward Brown.
Number 2, please, Mr. Speaker. Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. This government is strengthening ties with our European allies to deliver mutual benefits for our prosperity and security. And as the Strategic Defence Review laid out, we need a resilient and competitive European defence industrial base to deliver the capabilities we need at speed and scale. With that UK-EU security and defence partnership now agreed, securing UK's swift participation in SAFE is a priority for the government. And of course, these partnerships complement and reinforce NATO's role as the cornerstone of Euro-Atlantic security.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In an increasingly unstable world, working with our European allies on defence and weapons production is vital for our security and our economy. If investment is needed, it should not stand in the way of the opportunity to support UK defence manufacturers, enable joint R&D and promote Britain's strategic interests on the global stage. My question to the Minister is, what recent discussions has he had with European counterparts about ensuring the UK has access to the Security Action for Europe Fund?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've been having regular conversations, as has the Foreign Secretary and colleagues across the MOD and the Cabinet Office. I was in Poland just last week discussing with our Polish allies our important collaboration, and of course the week before that in Rome with the Weimar Plus group. So these are active and ongoing conversations, and they are absolutely crucial. I agree with him at a time of such geopolitical uncertainty.
Question number 3, Mr. Speaker, please. Thank you.
Secretary of State.
We're proud to be founding partners of Gavi. We've invested over $5 billion since 2000, helping to immunise over 1 billion children. Gavi's enjoyed good cross-party support in this House, and I'm looking forward to updating the House accordingly.
Sean.
Mr. Speaker, I'm going to thank the Secretary of State Foreign Secretary very much for his response. I very much warmly welcome the Prime Minister's repeated assurances that vaccination remains an international development priority, and also with the Foreign Secretary as to the day ahead of tomorrow's high-level pledging summit. Does the Minister agree with me that the UK must continue to make a significant contribution to Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, to ensure that millions of children are protected from some of the world's deadliest yet treatable diseases, such as malaria? Thank you so much.
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I'm not going to anticipate the announcement that we may make tomorrow, but I'm hugely grateful that the Honourable Gentleman has raised this issue. We are a proud founding member of the Global Fund. We were very pleased to co-host the Global Fund's 8th replenishment alongside South Africa, and I look forward to making an announcement very shortly.
Lisa Smart.
Question 4, Mr. Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
We've renewed engagement with our allies to pursue all lawful avenues to make Russia pay for Putin's illegal war on Ukraine. And I've engaged with partners on this as G7 foreign ministers, and I look forward to speaking to partners at the NATO Hague Summit later on today.
Mr. Smart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I saw for myself the impact of Russia's barbarism in Kyiv and Chernihiv last month, and I heard directly from some of those brave Ukrainians who had been subject to war crimes in Yehidny. There is a lot going on in the world at the moment, but what assurances can the Foreign Secretary give the House and those Ukrainians waiting to be able to go home that he is straining every sinew so that Russia pays for its crimes and pays for its war crimes?
Secretary of State.
Our support is ironclad. She will have seen our continuing package of sanctions on Russia. She will recognise that this will be central to our discussions at NATO later on today and tomorrow. And can I say to her, whether it's at the G7, whether it's at NATO, whether it's at Weimar Plus, the UK continues to lead on this critical issue, not just for Ukraine, but for European security.
And a Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the honourable gentleman consider further sanctions on the Russian regime for the forced deportation of Ukrainian children? In recent peace talks, the Russian delegation proposed an exchange of prisoners of war for Ukrainian children that had been stolen from their homes, equating combatants with children who receive special protected status under international law. Is this not horrific? And does he share my concern that 53,000 Ukrainian children are expected to attend summer camps in Russia this summer, from which they are unlikely to return to their homes?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for continuing to prosecute this issue and raise it at every opportunity. It's a heinous crime. We have already sanctioned some of the individuals that lie behind it. I won't comment on future sanctions, but of course we keep this under full consideration, and it will also be a topic of discussion both with the Ukrainian foreign ministers and with NATO ministers later on today.
Foreign Secretary David Lammy.
Mr. Speaker, Ukraine has bravely fought back Putin's illegal invasion, and that is with our undoubted support. Can the Foreign Secretary just give an update on what action is actually underway to release the billions of pounds of frozen Russian assets? And on the subject of Russian threats and malign influence, he will be alarmed to know that the political opposition leaders in Georgia have been arrested and imprisoned this week. What steps is the government taking in response, and will further sanctions follow and be considered to curtail Putin's absolute abuse of democracy in Europe?
Foreign Secretary.
What can I say to the right honourable lady that my honourable friend, the Minister for Europe, has condemned what took place in Georgia over the last few days, and I endorse that condemnation. She will recognise that on the issue of Russian assets, we are engaged particularly with European colleagues who are more exposed than we are. And it has been right to allow new governments in Europe to take their place and to consider the issues, because it does require some technical understanding. But we continue to press it, and it will be a topic at NATO later on today.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Colin.
Mr. Speaker, over the weekend, while the world's attention was fixated on the escalating conflict in the Middle East, President Putin restated publicly his desire to conquer the whole of Ukraine and his readiness to use nuclear weapons against Kyiv. I welcome the Foreign Secretary's assurance that he is maintaining a focus on Putin's barbaric war against Ukraine. The Secretary of State has previously told the House that Germany and Belgium are the blockers to international agreement on seizing frozen Russian assets. So can he set out how he and the Prime Minister will raise this proposal with his Belgian and German counterparts at the NATO summit? And will he let us know whether he has considered replicating the proposals by the EU to extract billions of euros more from those assets by moving them into higher yielding investments?
Secretary.
it's important to recognise that within the European Union, they have just come forward with a new sanctions package. And I congratulate them for that 18th package, given that he will recognise that there have been countries like Hungary that have been backmarkers and blockers on this particular issue. He's heard what I've said on Russian assets. It's been important for new governments to be able to consider these things afresh and get up to technical speed. The way forward must be to pool those assets so all of us bear joint liability, as it were, and these discussions continue apace.
Well,
Question number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We are steadfast in our support for women and girls. The appointment of Baroness Harman as Special Envoy underscores this commitment, and we're focusing much of our effort on the most marginalised women and girls who are disproportionately affected by ongoing conflicts and crises. For example, food assistance to 800,000 displaced people on the Chad-Sudan border, almost 90% of whom are women and children.
Well,
Mr. Speaker, yesterday we welcomed an ambitious and much needed industrial strategy which will rely on bold trade deals with countries around the world. Britain has a strong tradition of promoting human rights in its work around the world, so can the Minister tell me how the FCDO is ensuring we uphold our commitment to rights for girls and women as we're developing trade deals with other countries?
Minister.
We're using our influence to unlock the full potential of women to participate in the economy. This includes working to include gender provisions in newly negotiated free trade agreements, and we're supporting women-led businesses to realise the benefits of trade. The Developing Countries Trading Scheme provides for 0% tariffs, disproportionately supporting smaller, women-led businesses in low-income countries.
Thank you,
Mr. Speaker. I should like to know what steps the Foreign Office is taking to protect women and girls in this country. There can be no better candidates for deportation than non-UK nationals who have violently raped children here. After the KC reporting of the gang scandal last week, ministers promised that they would do everything they could to get the men involved deported. So can the Foreign Secretary confirm that he has already told Pakistan that British aid and diplomatic visas will be withdrawn if convicted rapists are not taken back?
The Minister, have you got something to the question?
I think this is probably a Home Office question, but we will do all that we can in the Foreign Office to support anything which supports victims and brings people to justice.
Right, Wyndham Morton, Shadow Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Education is a basic right, and ensuring quality education for every girl is essential to building a more equitable world. In 2023 in Government, we launched the Women and Girls Strategy to deliver on the 3 E's: education, empowering women and girls, and ending violence. Does the Minister stand by the commitment to ensure that at least 50% of aid reaches women and girls? And most importantly, will she confirm the 2025-26 ODA spending for global education following the spending review?
Minister.
We are committed to supporting women in all that we do, and we are supporting, for example, 200,000 displaced children with education interventions in Sudan and reaching Sudanese refugee populations in 6 countries through £14 million of funding for Education Cannot Wait, which I think she may know from when she was a minister, or was that one of the programmes which she cut when she was a minister? But the UK support through the International Finance Facility for Education will unlock up to £1 billion in additional and affordable education, and our equality impact assessment will be published shortly so that she can analyse the exact pounds and pence.
Brian Eastman.
Question 7, please, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the UK operates one of the most robust export control regimes in the world. One of our first acts in government was to review and suspend export licences that could be used by the IDF in Gaza. We have successfully implemented that suspension and continue to refuse relevant licence applications. All export licences are kept under careful and continual review, and we can suspend, refuse or revoke licences as required.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. The war criminals of Benjamin Netanyahu's government are carrying out the most vile human rights abuse and genocide. At the same time, The UK carry out the training of Israeli military personnel, facilitate almost daily spy flights that provide intelligence, and there is a continued exporting of military equipment to Israel. With all of that, Mr Speaker, I ask the Minister if the Government will support an independent public inquiry into UK involvement in Israeli military operations in Gaza.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, I think it's important to be focused on the facts at issue. We're not supporting spy flights. We have a limited presence in order to try and find hostages in Gaza for reasons that the whole House would understand and support. There are less than 10 IDF personnel receiving any training in the UK, and that training is academic and non-military in its nature. We are not arming Israel's war in Gaza. We categorically do not export any bombs or ammunition for use in military operations in Gaza. My honourable friend asked about an independent inquiry. The government welcomes scrutiny. I welcome my time in this chamber, and on the questions at issue in relation to the arms sales, including in relation to the F-35 programme, there is a judicial review on which we will hear findings shortly. There is plenty of scrutiny onto this government on these issues.
Andrew George.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Sorry, I didn't catch it straight away. Would the government let us know what assessment they've made of Israel's stockpile of nuclear weapons?
Minister.
I think, Mr Speaker, that the honourable gentleman will understand why I wouldn't comment on these issues from the dispatch box.
Brian Matthew.
Question number 8, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Well, thank you, Mr Speaker. Our work on water, sanitation and hygiene helps deliver development objectives on global health, climate and growth. We are supporting 8 countries in Africa and Asia to develop climate-resilient water, sanitation and hygiene services and prevent the spread of diseases, including cholera. We're working through the World Bank and through the Water Global Challenge programme to reach 300 million people with water services by 2030.
Brian Matthews.
Mr Speaker, a recent polling by WaterAid and YouGov shows that access to water, sanitation and hygiene is the #1 priority the UK public want to see funded through UK aid. This makes sense given that water underpins global health, keeps girls in school and builds climate resilient communities. So does the Minister agree it's one of the smartest and most cost-effective ways to deliver the UK's development goals? Because without access to safe water, sanitation and hygiene, there could be no meaningful progress in any of these areas. Thank you.
Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, he makes very important points. I've had the pleasure of seeing very many important water and sanitation projects in my previous career, and we are very much focused on maintaining our impact by focusing on partnerships with governments and multilaterals and establishing the conditions that can secure additional domestic funding and private investment in these areas. And he rightly makes that link between water and sanitation and health, and that will of course be considered as we approach the allocations of the funding into the future.
Sir John Hayes.
9, Mr Speaker. Yeah.
Minister.
Mr Speaker, with your permission, I'll answer questions 9, 10 and 14 together. The Diego Garcia military base deal secures the future of the strategically critical US-UK military base. It will protect our national security for generations and ensure we maintain vital capabilities. It's our most significant contribution to the transatlantic defence and security partnership and has been strengthened since our agreement with the previous Mauritian government and the deal indeed under discussion by the previous government. The payments will be split between the FCDO and MOD and published in the usual way. And of course the opposition understands the jeopardy facing the base and the necessity of this treaty, which is why they started negotiating in the first place.
Sir John Hayes.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The Foreign Secretary is an old friend of the member for Lincoln, a Lincolnshire neighbour who in all his innocence I regard with a degree of paternal care. And so I asked this question more in sorrow than in anger. And this assumption, rooted in the government statements, is that unless we do a deal with Mauritius, the International Telecommunications Union could decide that Mauritius is sovereign and deny access to both the US and the UK. This is fundamentally untrue. The ITU has no competence in that regard, is ignored by the US already. So I want us to confirm that that argument is entirely bogus. This is not a deal. This is not diplomacy. This is a disgrace.
Minister.
Well, I thoroughly reject that statement by the honourable gentleman. He knows I have a lot of respect for him, but I'm afraid he's completely mistaken on this. And the fact is the courts were already making decisions that undermined our position. Legally binding provisional measures could have come within weeks, affecting the operational ability of our base to function as it was. And of course, we believe that an inevitable binding judgment would follow. The deal has been done. This House is now scrutinising it. I've appeared before 2 committees in recent weeks, Mr. Speaker, and of course there'll be further such scrutiny over the weeks ahead.
Stuart Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister confirm, under the current circumstances, if the US want to launch an attack on Iran from Diego Garcia, will the UK government support it?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, as the Foreign Secretary has made absolutely clear, there was no UK involvement in the US strikes on Iran. He will understand we don't comment on private conversations with our allies or on hypothetical operations.
David Reid.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I had hoped for a more precise answer to my question. So rather than pressing again for exact figures or a departmental breakdown, let me proceed down a related line of inquiry and ask this. Is there any mechanism, legal or otherwise, that the Mauritian government could use to reopen the Chagos negotiation or to request further financial or material assistance in a way that could result in additional costs for the British taxpayer?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I've set out the costs very, very clearly. They average out at 101 million over the course of the deal. That compares very favourably with, for example, what France pays for its military facility in Djibouti. This treaty has been entered into in good faith between the UK and Mauritius. It will be legally binding, and we're absolutely clear that it's compliant with international law and all of our other obligations.
Lord MacDougall.
Mr. Speaker, when the Foreign Affairs Committee were recently in Washington, we raised the Diego Garcia deal with the administration. And, Mr. Speaker, they could not have been more enthusiastic for this deal because they recognise that it secures our strategic interests in the area. Does the Minister agree with me that it's maybe time for the people in the benches opposite, the members in the benches opposite, to stop playing politics with national defence?
Reversed it round. Minister, that would have been.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I couldn't agree more. This deal is supported by the United States, it's supported by our Five Eyes partners, it's supported by India. It secures our national security, the security of our allies and this base well into the next century. As I've said repeatedly many times, if there wasn't a problem, why did the previous government start negotiating?
Shadow Minister Andrew Ross.
Mr. Speaker, Labour's surrender of British sovereignty has been welcomed by China, Russia and Iran, and now we learn that the UK will have to notify Mauritius of any military operations coming from Diego Garcia, jeopardising our national security. Far from upholding our international obligations, this treaty is a shameful betrayal of British Chagosians, with no guarantee of access to Mauritian-controlled 40 million of trust fund, while British taxpayers fork out 30 billion to subsidise tax cuts in Mauritius. So, I ask the Minister, why won't the government allow this House a proper debate and a vote before the 21-day CRAG deadline next week? And shouldn't we actually keep the Chagos Islands British and under the protection of the Crown? Wouldn't that be a better policy?
Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, half of his question was rhetoric and half of it was completely wrong, and he might want to consider correcting the record on a number of points. We do not have to inform Mauritius before undertaking military action from the base. It's regarding expedition information after actions. There is no fettering of our ability to operate from there. The costs he quoted were simply wrong. It's 101 million averaged over. The total net present value of the payments is 3.4 billion. There have been all sorts of wild figures pasted around, Mr. Speaker. They don't reflect the reality. This is considered by the government actuaries, and I really do hope, given the wide geopolitical threats that this country and our allies face at the moment, that he would come with some more serious questions.
Oliver Ryan.
Number 11, please.
Well done.
Foreign Secretary.
The United Kingdom and Saudi Arabia are historic allies with a modern partnership. I met His Highness Prince Faisal bin Farhan immediately after the first Israeli strike, signifying the significance, strength and trust in the relationship, and the Prime Minister visited Riyadh for his first Strategic Partnership Council with His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, where he committed to an ambitious programme of cooperation and enhanced mutual prosperity.
Oliver Ryan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the the Secretary of State, for that answer and declare my interest as the chair of the all-party parliamentary group on the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia is an important partner for trade, for peace in the Middle East, and for the combating of terrorism around the world. With reference to recent events in Iran, how is the Foreign Secretary utilising our relationship, involving the Saudi government in our own de-escalation efforts in the region?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I found it hugely beneficial to be able to speak to His Highness Prince Faisal so closely over the last few days at the outbreak of this crisis, and then again in the last 48 hours. We stay in close touch. They're a key ally, and of course we were worried about how the situation would affect regional allies like Saudi Arabia. But there's so much that we can do together, not just on security, of course, on trade. Our trade has grown by 70%, and we remain committed to growing our total trade to 30 billion by 2030.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Creation of the Abraham Accords was one of the achievements of the first Trump administration, and the President of the US has said that he aims for the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to join those accords. What is the UK government doing to encourage that process, and what preconditions does he believe Riyadh has for joining the accords?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, the honourable gentleman raises a good question, and we should remember, when thinking about October the 7th, that one of the objectives of Hamas was to tear apart the prospects of normalisation in the region. And notwithstanding the horrors and the pain that the crisis in the region has over these last months, the Abraham Accords and the changed relationship with so many Gulf partners particularly, but also other Muslim countries and Israel, is important to keep hold of. We continue to discuss these issues, but there are no prospects until we get to a ceasefire.
Lewis Atkins.
Number 12, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the safety of British nationals is our first priority. We are providing support and advice to more than 1,000 British nationals as they seek to leave the region by land and air. We have deployed teams to Israel, Cyprus, Egypt and Jordan. Our embassy in Tehran has been temporarily withdrawn, but continues to provide support to British nationals in Iran remotely. We have bolstered teams in neighbouring countries to support British nationals seeking to get to safety. And when Israeli airspace opened yesterday, we ran our first RAF evacuation flight, and I can confirm to the House now that we will fly another today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. British nationals in Israel, including the daughter of my constituents, remain concerned about their safety. Advice has been for British citizens to make their way to Egypt via the border, but I think there's been some reports that the Israeli government have suggested those journeys would be unsafe. I wonder if the Minister could clarify the advice to British citizens in that situation.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, travel advice is the best source of advice for British nationals in Israel. There are options for leaving by land, as my honourable friend's constituent is aware. There are now options for leaving by air as well, but as you will understand, as the whole House will understand, the flow of flights out of Israel still remain limited. British nationals in Israel will want to make their own judgments about whether they will want to wait for a flight or make a land journey, and my officials are available to advise every constituent on the options before them.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Two of my constituents are currently in Tehran, but they say that fuel shortages, long queues and poor internet access, as well as closed airspace, have made it almost impossible for them to leave Iran. They urgently need clear guidance, they need a way to formally register their presence, and they need consular support, which they're struggling to access. So will the Minister urgently meet with me to ensure that my constituents get the assistance they need from the government to come back home safely to Eastbourne?
Minister.
I'm, of course, very happy to meet with the honourable gentleman. The whole House knows we have advised against all travel to Iran for some time and been clear that our ability to provide consular assistance is very limited in Iran for those reasons, particularly with the temporary withdrawal of our embassy. For those in Iran, we would encourage them to be in touch with the Foreign Office. We will provide what advice and support we can, and I'm, of course, happy to meet with the Honourable Gentleman.
John Mill.
Question 13, Mr Speaker.
Who wants it? Minister, welcome back.
Forgive me, Mr Speaker. We are committed to recognising a Palestinian state at a time that has the most impact and is most conducive to long-term prospects for peace. UK bilateral recognition is the single most important action we can take towards Palestinian statehood, and that is why it is important to get the timing right, so it creates genuine momentum and is not simply a symbolic gesture.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. What's happening in Gaza is hard enough to watch, but if we're to prevent the West Bank going the same way in a few years' time, we must act today. Would the Minister agree that recognising the principle of a Palestinian state without making any judgment for the moment on its borders is the strongest and most effective way to reaffirm the UK's long-standing commitment to a two-state solution while there is still territory left to form it with?
Minister.
The Honourable Gentleman makes important points about the situation in the West Bank, points that we've discussed in this chamber before. We have condemned the expansion of violence and the expansion of illegal settlements in the West Bank. There are a range of issues with which we profoundly disagree with the Israeli government in relation to their approach to West Bank issues, and we will continue to raise these issues with force. And I refer him to my previous answer about recognition.
Debbie Abrahams.
Honourable friend update me in terms of the conference that was due to be held at the weekend following the bombing of Iran by Israel, where this was the potential for recognition was being discussed.
Minister.
I think my right honourable friend refers to the two-state solution conference due to take place in New York last week. It has been suspended given events in the region for understandable reasons by its French and Saudi co-hosts. We expect that it will be rearranged, and I've been in conversation with my Saudi colleagues about when that might be.
Stella Creasy.
Question number 15, Mr Speaker.
Foreign Secretary.
I'm committed to securing Abdel Fattah's release. I was committed to this before coming to power, and I remain committed now. The government is engaging intensively on this case. I raise Allah's imprisonment every time I'm in contact with my Egyptian counterpart, and the Prime Minister has raised it on several conversations with President Sisi.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I think everybody in this chamber, including the Foreign Secretary, is desperately worried about the health of Layla Suif, who has felt that she's had no choice but to be on hunger strike since her son Alaa should have been released last September and is in and out of hospital, desperately ill, dying in slow motion, as her daughter says. I welcome very much the work that the Foreign Secretary and the Prime Minister have done on this case and the previous commitments that they've made. As he knows, the Egyptians have remained steadfast in their objections, so can he now confirm that he's considering all options to secure Alaa's release, including changing the Foreign Office travel advice for Egypt to highlight the risk of arbitrary detention so that no other family is put through this kind of anguish?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, can I say to my honourable friend that this case and Layla's condition has concerned me greatly. It's been a top priority every week that I've been in office, at every single level. Prime Minister, Foreign Secretary, Minister, National Security Advisor, we are engaged with the Egyptians. I believe our strategy is working, but clearly, given Layla's health, we must see progress at pace with the Egyptian government.
Brendan O'Hara.
Mr Speaker, I recall before he became Foreign Secretary, when he asked the previous government what diplomatic price has Egypt paid for the arbitrary detention of Alaa before demanding that serious diplomatic consequences should be put on Egypt should they not release him. Alaa's mother is 278 days into her hunger strike and is critically ill. So can I ask him that since he became Foreign Secretary, What diplomatic price has Egypt paid? And what have been those serious diplomatic consequences he can point to that Egypt have been forced to pay since July of last year?
Foreign Secretary.
Well, can I reassure him that I remain in close touch with Layla and the family? Can I reassure him that this is a #1 priority for me, and I expect to see him released? And can I also just gently remind him that he has stood up time after time, raised his concerns in Gaza, and he will understand if he wants the UK government to have the effect in Gaza, we must have relations with the Egyptians.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we are clear that Israel must immediately allow rapid and unhindered aid into Gaza, including desperately needed medical supplies. The UK continues to support the delivery of medical assistance through trusted partners, including UK Med, who've completed over 500,000 patient consultations in Gaza since January 2024, and we will continue to assess how we can best support those in need.
Jeremy Corbyn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Foreign Secretary will understand that I wrote to him on the 18th of June asking him if he would meet Dr. Mohammed Mustafa, who has assembled a children's hospital in prefabricated form in Jordan. It is ready to go into Gaza. It will be able to help the 400,000 children in northern Gaza who at the moment have no access to any medical facilities at all. This is desperately urgent. Can I ask him to meet with Dr. Mustafa in order to familiarise himself with the opportunity here of doing something practical and good to help desperate children in northern Gaza?
Yeah. Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the Right Honourable Gentleman for his continued engagement on these questions. We have discussed at this dispatch box many times the restrictions on aid getting into Gaza, including in relation to construction materials. I'm very happy to take a further look at this specific proposal and see if there's anything we can do.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Al-Hali Hospital in Gaza, which is run by the Anglican Church in Jerusalem, has repeatedly been bombed. Earlier this month, the hospital's compound was hit, killing 5 people, including a father escorting his son to surgery. The Minister has spoken much about the need for aid to get in, but I'd like him to just set out what concrete actions he is going to take now, because saying Israel must do something doesn't mean they're going to act. So I want to know what action is he going to take to ensure that the attacks on our hospitals, medics and patients ends.
Well said. Mr. Speaker, I want nothing more than the attacks on hospitals, on medical personnel, on aid workers to end. My honourable friend is absolutely right to say that I have said many times from this dispatch box that I want that to be the case, and yet these strikes have continued. We continue to raise these issues with the Israeli government. We have taken a series of actions, many of which we've discussed already over the course of this morning, and we will continue to take actions until things change. Until things change, this government will not be satisfied.
Come to Topicals, Daniel Francis.
Mr. Speaker, Britain is at the heart of diplomatic efforts to de-escalate the situation in the Middle East. We are clear that Iran must never have a nuclear weapon, while at the UK, EU, G7 and NATO summits, and in my engagements for the High North to North Africa, the government has been delivering security and growth for the British people, deepening Britain's partnerships and alliances, and addressing the ongoing horrendous conflicts in Gaza and Ukraine.
Francis.
Speaker, I know this House, along with my constituents across Bexley and Crayford, welcome the sanctions taken against 2 Israeli officials earlier this month. So can I therefore ask my honourable friend what discussions the UK government is holding with our international partners regarding further actions that could be taken in relation to the incitement of violence against Palestinian citizens?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend for the question. He will have seen that on taking those sanctions against Ben Gvir and Smodrick, we worked with Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway to do that. I can't speculate on future sanctions, but I can assure him that we are coordinating with our allies, and he will know that on the issue of humanitarian aid, for example, 26 countries joined us.
Foreign Secretary David Patel.
Mr. Speaker, given the clear threat Iran poses to the United Kingdom, our allies and to the Middle East, does the Foreign Secretary support the actions undertaken by the United States to degrade Iran's nuclear weapons? And he will also have heard that President Trump has said that Iran's nuclear capabilities are gone. Does he welcome this?
Foreign Secretary.
It was important to be alongside Secretary of State Rubio last week in DC. We continue to work closely with President Trump, and the Prime Minister spoke to him just 2 days ago. And of course, the initial assessments of those attacks in Iran are coming in, and we will assess that in due course.
Mr. Speaker, given the situation that has emerged in the Middle East and the fact that the de-escalation has not taken place in recent hours, can the Foreign Secretary outline what is now effectively going to be quite an urgent situation in terms of measures that he's overseeing to bring back 4,000 British nationals now stranded in Israel? He will have received, as I have, large volumes of correspondence overnight from concerned families. What immediate steps are going to be taken? I understand that another plane has been put in place, but we're now speaking about 4,000 British nationals who are clearly stuck in Israel.
Foreign Secretary.
Well, I was very pleased to see that flight came in from Birmingham. We will do all we can to work with the Israeli government to open airspace and to continue flights. We have a ceasefire. I have seen, of course, that ceasefire has been violated, and I urge all partners to keep to that ceasefire so airspace can open up and commercial flights can resume.
Chris Hinsliff.
Speaker, many of my constituents have raised concerns about the use of RAF Akrotiri to support Israel military activity in Gaza. Given the rapidly developing situation with Iran, can ministers assure this House that British arms and military bases will not be likewise implicated in any further escalations of that conflict?
Foreign Secretary.
I can't comment on hypotheticals, but I can assure him that we will do all we can to protect our assets and our troops in the region, and always to stay within international law.
Vicky Slade.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The UN Children in Conflict report showed that violence against children increased by 25% last year. It doesn't even include what's going on this year. The Israeli government is listed as the most prolific perpetrator of grave violations against children for a second year running, making it the most dangerous place on earth to be a child. What specific steps is the Foreign Secretary taking to protect children in conflict in Gaza and elsewhere like Somalia and Haiti?
Minister.
The Honourable Lady raises vital questions about the status of children in Gaza, and in response to one of her colleagues, I set out some of the measures that we have taken already. Clearly, children in Gaza, like all civilians in Gaza, are under the most enormous pressure at the moment, and aid getting in is a vital next step. Where children from Gaza are outside of the region, so in particular in Egypt and Jordan, we have provided support to them there, and in a very limited set of cases where specialist medical attention that is only possible from the UK is the case, in a few limited cases, we have brought children from Gaza to the UK.
Mr. Speaker, almost daily now we hear reports of Israeli forces opening fire near aid distribution sites in Gaza. People cannot even access basic food supplies without risking their lives. Given the horrific level of suffering we can all see taking place, is it not time, Minister, to end all arms sales to Israel and to recognise the state of Palestine?
Foreign Secretary.
We have banned arms sales that could be used in Gaza. I'd want to reassure honourable friend of that. We liaise with the French and the Saudi Arabians despite the suspension of their conference. I think the intention is to resume in September.
Lexington.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. At the Foreign Affairs Committee yesterday, the Minister for the Overseas Territories was unable to give clear guarantees on the future of the marine protected area once sovereignty is surrendered to Mauritius. Does the Foreign Secretary accept that his Chagos surrender deal does not currently secure the marine environment, and that a future environmental protection agreement may result in the UK paying even more money to Mauritius?
Minister.
Well, it's a shame the tone of his question, Mr. Speaker. I thought we had a very constructive conversation yesterday, and I took on board the points that he and the chair of the committee raised. I can assure him that that marine protected area is a key part of our agreement with Mauritius, and this government is committed to protecting our oceans and natural resources globally.
Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tulsi Gabbard, US's Director of Intelligence, said in March that Iran was not building the nuclear weapons, as did the UN Atomic Energy. But a day before, conference to recognise Palestine, Israel decides unilaterally that Iran has nuclear weapons and there was an immediate threat of attack, and therefore it bombed Iran. The illegal bombing by Israel was a distraction from the shooting and killing of starving Palestinians and to prevent the recognition of State of Palestine. So can I ask the Minister...
Sean Punchy, quick.
Thank you. Can I ask the Minister what steps are you taking to stop this killing of Palestinians and to recognise the State of Palestine?
Secretary.
Well, can I say to my honourable friend that it is important to recognise that in our own country, at Sizewell, at Urenco, uranium is enriched between 3 to 5%. The IAEA has found 60% enrichment in Iran. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. We are doing all we can diplomatically to get a negotiated settlement to that problem, and of course we continue to press for aid to the Palestinians.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The ministers have collectively restated their commitment to a two-state solution in the Israel-Palestine conflict, but only one of those states is currently recognised. I believe there's support in this House for it, and if it was put to a vote, that would be expressed. Would that not strengthen their hand, and will the Minister bring it to a vote?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we've discussed these issues many times. My honourable friend asked me earlier why, when we say things at this dispatch box, do they not happen. It is the view of this House is clearly very important on the question of a two-state solution, but it's the job of Foreign Office ministers to try and make it a reality in practice through diplomacy.
Boynton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister join me in welcoming the ceasefire between Israel and Iran announced by President Trump? And although clearly the situation remains fragile, does he see an opportunity to restore stability, to develop a diplomatic solution to Iran's nuclear programme and ensuring Iran never ever has access to nuclear weapons?
Foreign Secretary.
Yes, I do.
Shocker Adam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Earlier this month, the US President ordered the brutal ICE raids in Los Angeles. He called those protesting against these raids as paid insurrectionists and criminal invaders. And a few days later, a gunman assassinated Democratic politician Melissa Holtman. In recent months, figures associated with the US President have spread disinformation and polarising rhetoric via social media, even targeting a government minister. I'm sure the Minister, Secretary of State, would agree this level of political violence cannot be imported to the UK.
Order. It's topical. I've got to get other people in. They're meant to be short and punchy. Please, let's see a quick answer now from Foreign Secretary.
Well, just as you wouldn't expect members of Congress or the Senate to comment on domestic issues with our own country, I'm not going to stray into domestic issues in the US. They remain our closest of allies.
Melanie Ward.
Speaker, and I pay tribute to the work of the Foreign Secretary and his team for all their diplomatic effort on de-escalation in the Middle East. With the rules-based order under enormous strain, it matters more than ever that we act to uphold international law and multilateral institutions. It's almost a year since the ICJ handed down their judgment on the illegality of Israel's occupation of Palestine. Let me ask the Minister, given that senior government ministers received advice last year on the implications for the UK, when can we expect a decision on the government's response?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I recognise the appetite of the Chamber to hear more about the ICJ advisory opinion. It was a far-reaching and complex judgment, and we are taking our time in our response.
Sir Julian Lewis.
What practical steps can the government take to support women and girls in Afghanistan who, after a period of being encouraged to liberate themselves, are now cast back into domestic servitude?
Mr. Speaker, it's an incredibly important question. As I think some in the House know, I negotiated with the Taliban when I was an official. It is a source of incredible personal frustration to me that the situation in Afghanistan for women has got worse and worse as the months have drawn on in Afghanistan. The Taliban need to change course, not just for the rights of women, but for the very viability of their economy and their country.
Jim Dixon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank the Minister for the Indo-Pacific for her support for the family of Simone White, who tragically died last year after drinking a free vodka shot in Laos. I hear very worrying reports that the hostel where this happened is due to reopen shortly under another name. Can I ask the Minister what assurance she can give me and the family that everything is being done to hold those involved accountable and to keep travellers safe from the dangers of methanol poisoning?
Well, Mr. Speaker, could I thank the hard-working MP for his constituents? And I met with Simone's family on the 14th of May, and of course, as he's aware, I did also meet with the Minister responsible in Vientiane, and I will raise his specific point today as a result of his intervention this morning.
Glynis Maddy.
Holyhead Towing in my constituency have vessels in the Middle East, specifically in Saudi Arabia, Qatar and the UAE. The company are keeping their crew updated to the best of their knowledge. What official advice or guidance is available for UK maritime operators working in the region?
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, as I said before, travel advice is the surest and most regularly updated advice for British nationals in the region. We did change travel advice yesterday in relation to Qatar, as my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, announced in the House. We hope, as the Foreign Secretary has said already this morning, that there will now be greater stability in the region, that the ceasefire holds, and that British nationals in the region are not so concerned, but travel advice is the best place to do it.
Thank
you, Mr. Speaker. The All-Party Parliamentary Group for Africa, which I chair, recently published its report on Africa's just energy transition to accessible and renewable and clean energy. What assessments has the Minister made of its report's 9 recommendations? For example, reforming carbon markets to work in Africa's interest and also ensuring international development funding is blended with private sector funding to invest in that transition.
Secretary.
Well, can I begin by congratulating my honourable friend for her elevation recently. Can I thank her for her work on the APPG, and can I assure her that we will review her report as part of our new Africa approach.
Sir James Cleverly.
Sir, Dame Karen Pierce is one of our most senior and experienced diplomats, and I very much welcome her appointment to be